There's a man in my neighborhood who checks his receipt at the grocery store every single time, standing by the cart return, scanning line by line for a mischarge on a $2 bag of onions. The same man has a boat sitting in his driveway under a blue tarp that he has used 4 times in 3 years and is still paying $211 a month for. Nobody thinks this is strange because we have all met some version of this man, and some of us are married to him, and a few of us, if we are honest with the mirror tonight, are him. My name is Daniel, and I have spent a long time noticing that the people who are most careful with their money in public are often the most reckless with it in private, and that the gap between those two versions of the same person is where entire financial lives quietly go missing. Today, I want to walk through some of the biggest myths in personal finance, not the ones you have already rolled your eyes at, but the sneakier ones, the ones that sound so responsible when you say them out loud that nobody ever stops to check if they are actually true. Start with Elena, because her myth is the one that looks the most like virtue. Elena is a middle school teacher, and 4 years ago she read that everyone needs an emergency fund covering 3 to 6 months of expenses, so she built one. And then she kept building, because if 6 months felt safe, surely 8 felt safer, and surely a year felt safest of all. Elena now has $31,000 sitting in a checking account that pays essentially nothing, next to zero, the kind of interest rate that rounds down to a joke. She calls this discipline. It is discipline, technically, in the same way that wearing a life jacket to bed is technically safety. The math on this is not subtle. If Elena moved 20,000 of that cushion into a high-yield savings account paying even 4.5%, which is not exotic, which is a Tuesday afternoon Google search, she would earn about $900 a year doing absolutely nothing differently with her life. Instead, that 20,000 sits in an account designed for a bank to lend out at higher rates while paying her almost none of it back. Over 10 years, the gap between doing nothing and moving 3 clicks in an app is close to $11,000, money she never spent, never lost to a bad decision, just left folded on the table because the word emergency made her afraid to touch a spreadsheet. The myth was never that emergency funds are bad. The myth is that safety only has one setting and that more of it is always better, when in reality, an oversized cushion sitting in the wrong account is not caution. It's just risk wearing a disguise that happens to be boring instead of exciting. Now bring in Priya, because her myth is the one everyone defends the loudest, usually with a story about willpower. Priya has 3 debts: a car loan at 6%, a small personal loan at 9%, and a credit card at 22% carrying a balance of $4,000. She read correctly that the debt snowball method, paying off your smallest balance first regardless of interest rate, keeps people motivated because of the quick emotional win. So she attacked the personal loan first because it had the lowest balance and left the 22% card sitting there collecting interest the entire time. Here's what that decision actually cost. While she spent 14 months clearing the personal loan, that credit card balance, untouched, below the minimum, accumulated roughly $1,100 in interest that would not have existed if she had attacked the highest rate first and let the small motivational win wait its turn. Financial psychologists are not wrong that momentum matters, and plenty of people quit entirely without an early win to point to. But nobody tells Priya that the snowball has a receipt, that the good feeling of crossing something off a list is being paid for, dollar by dollar, at a rate that would make a payday lender blush. This is not a story about Priya being weak. It's a story about a strategy engineered to feel good being marketed as a strategy engineered to work, when those are 2 different products wearing the same label. If you're noticing a pattern here, that the cost of these myths never shows up as a single dramatic loss, but as a slow leak nobody schedules a meeting about, stick around because it gets more interesting. And if this kind of thing is useful to you, this is a good moment to hit subscribe so the next one finds you. Now for Marcus, and his myth is the loudest one in the room, even though nobody says it out loud, which is the belief that a bigger paycheck automatically means less financial stress. Marcus is an electrician who got a raise 2 years ago, moving from $72,000 a year to $91,000, a genuinely good jump. the kind of number that should have loosened something in his chest. Instead, his stress went up, not down. In the 18 months after that raise, Marcus financed a boat, upgraded his truck to a trim level he didn't need, and started eating out 4 nights a week instead of 2, because the version of himself that made $91,000 felt entitled to live like it. This is no mystery. It has a name, lifestyle creep. But knowing the name doesn't stop it, because the creep never announces itself as a decision. It arrives as a series of things that each individually seem fine. The boat payment alone is $211 a month, which over the 4 years he is financing it comes to just over $10,000 for an asset he has used by his own count 16 times total, which puts the real cost per use somewhere around $650, a number he has never once calculated, because nobody calculates the cost per use of the thing that is supposed to make them happy. Meanwhile, his retirement contribution rate never moved, still 6%, the same 6% when he made $72,000, because raising it would have meant admitting that the extra income wasn't fully spoken for yet, and admitting that felt worse than just letting the boat answer the question for him. A bigger income doesn't buy peace automatically. It buys options, and options only turn into peace if somebody actually chooses peace with them, which is a much less exciting purchase than a boat. There's a version of all 3 of these people that exists in nearly every household in this country, and the reason none of them notice the pattern is that each myth is dressed up as the responsible one. Building a bigger cushion sounds responsible. Paying off something, anything, sounds responsible. Rewarding a raise with a slightly better life sounds not just responsible, but earned. That's what makes these myths more expensive than the obvious ones about lattes and lottery tickets, because nobody has to talk you out of gambling your rent money, but talking you out of an 8-month emergency fund sounds like talking you out of being careful, and that's a much harder sell. Here's the one that surprised me while I was putting this together, the myth that turned out to actually hold up. You've probably heard that you should always get the full employer match on your 401k before doing anything else with extra money, and I went in expecting to find the usual asterisk, some hidden cost nobody mentions. I couldn't find one. If your employer matches 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of your salary, that match is an immediate, guaranteed 50% return the moment it lands, before the market does anything at all, before a single dollar is invested in anything. There's no credit card, no real estate deal, no side hustle that reliably beats 50% for 0 effort and 0 risk. Priya, it turns out, was getting her employer match the whole time, and that one habit, sitting quietly underneath her more expensive debt decision, was outperforming everything else in her financial life, without her ever noticing it deserved credit. So where does that leave you, watching this on a Tuesday night with your own version of a boat under a tarp or a spreadsheet you're afraid to open? It leaves you exactly where Elena, Priya, and Marcus are, which is not foolish, not disciplined, just working from instructions that sounded true because they sounded careful, and careful is not the same as correct. The fix is not more willpower, it's asking a slightly ruder question about every rule you've inherited, which is simply, compared to what? Elena's fund was safe compared to nothing, but not compared to a better account. Priya's snowball felt smart compared to quitting, but not compared to math. Marcus's upgrades felt earned compared to deprivation, but not compared to a version of himself that got the raise and kept the boat as a rental instead. If you want more of this, the kind of thing that actually holds up when you check it, that's what this channel is for. So subscribe if you haven't already, because there's more of this coming. I'll leave you with the question that started this whole video for me, and I'd genuinely like to read your answer in the comments. Which financial rule have you followed for years without ever once checking whether it was still true for you? And what do you think it's actually cost you?